Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and for the past few days I did end up playing. For one of my sub goals for the stream, I decided to make playing Quin's current build a goal, and we hit it. So I've been playing Quin's current build, which is no longer his current build because it died. But the concept around it and what I was supposed to do was Chieftain Bleed Earthquake. It was supposed to be a particular form of punishment because holy shit, Chieftain Bleed Earthquake. I mean, you know, infinite possibilities in PoE and all that, and that's what we have to do at that time. That is a bit rough. But it's not too bad. Like, I was absolutely dreading the idea of having to play something like this, just because it's pretty vanilla. Nothing too crazy. It's a, more or less like a 2014 PoE build in concept. But knowing that the end game had a bunch of new stuff for me, new fat mapping to be doing, I did figure that Chieftain, or rather just Bleed Earthquake, if done well enough, could actually be a nice little mapper and a nice little end game bosser. So I was actually kind of into the idea of getting it into those high tier maps and then starting to farm the new scarabs and new content, and it ended up doing pretty well for that purpose. It is a much slower character than I'm used to, because it's pretty tough to get any sort of attack speed up on something like this as a base, and by default, Bleed character doesn't really value attack speed all that much. You are more or less trying to either get one large bleed up or 8 fairly large bleeds from Crimson Dance up, and it's more about still having decent bleed and then just decent bleed duration and ramping, so getting 8 of your best bleeds up on an enemy at the same time. And yeah, that is kind of where the build ended up going, more into a Crimson Dance direction, even though for a lot of it I was also trying out one big single bleed and sometimes entangling arrowing, something like that as well. In the end, for all these boss fights that you see, these are just regular boss fights because Ubers are fucking hard to get any access to at this point. These are all just regular boss fights. It went pretty well for that, and this is all Crimson Dance action, so stacking lots of bleeds. Because we are a chieftain, we have Half-Wise Chosen, which is like a big extra slam of your chosen slam. We have Fist of War, making our thing a 7-link technically. And it does mean that you can stack bleeds a little bit easier for Crimson Dance, whereas if we were just doing one big single bleed, we'd be fishing for our big large bleed, and then kind of not getting any real use out of Half-Wise Chosen, which is a big reason why Quin wanted to do this build as a chieftain, I think, to stack Crimson Dance bleed and get your Crimson Dance ramp up quite a bit more effectively than usual. Other than that, the Chieftain gives you a bunch of max res, which is a decent way of building defenses in the current endgame. Oh yeah, this is just going to be some tier 17 footage, because as you can see throughout the previous few minutes of footage, everything was going pretty well. I did tier 16s fairly well. I did a whole bunch of Guardians, so I did a bunch of endgame, basically farm, Guardians and invites and all that, and it's pretty comfy for that. It's a good starting build for getting your way through the Atlas. It's a little bit slower, but then you do your bosses, and that's pretty veg as well, because it's not Ubers or anything. And then we do the bridging content between current bosses and Ubers, and that is tier 17, and we get fisted in the ass. It was a rough experience. One thing you do notice in Path of Exile when playing a character like this is that everything does move and attack pretty fucking fast. So when I'm usually playing my other builds, especially if I'm building into a lot of speed like a Deadeye or something, you are hitting before you get hit. And that's the idea. Kill before you get killed. With this sort of a build where it's nothing too crazy on speed, you are noticing that everything's pretty fucking fast, and you are usually getting hit before anything, before you get a chance to hit anything. Aside from that, the tier 17s just seem kind of dumb. Like, you have to spend lots of chaos to reroll stuff until you get some palatable assortment of mods, and even then, the palatable assortment of mods means that the map and the bosses are going to have some kind of fuckery, some kind of tomfoolery, and it's going to be a bit of a shit experience. So In this one in particular, I had Maven following me around. Okay, no big deal. Nope, turns out she's going to do Be Healed or Vitality Boon roughly every 2 fucking seconds. And that becomes pretty annoying if you don't have bajillions of DPS. And then the arena gets kind of messy, and I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do at that point. When I've got nowhere left to maneuver my character against the bosses anymore, and they attack pretty freaking fast. So I ended up breaking this one T17 against Katarina. Couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do anymore at this point. Just run around and get almost 2-shot most of the time. And then I bricked one other tier 17 because those are the only 2 ones I found. Tried both of them. This one didn't seem like too much of a bad roll, except we had Union of Souls. Oh, how bad could that be? Union of Souls, eventually things get kind of tough. Wrong. Kill 1 mob and everything in the map is twice as hard. Kill 2 mobs, everything's 3 times as hard. All of a sudden, I've killed almost nothing and the entire fucking map is gargantuan in size and unfucking killable. Undoable, can't do anything with it. It's just a brick of a mod unless you have an insane fucking build. So, yeah, look, the Quinn build, not too bad. It was kind of fun to play with. It's nothing crazy as a concept. I'll go over it in just a second. But other than that, you've also got yourself some nice, fat, enjoyable tier 17s, which, it's too early to tell entirely because I needed to run another couple characters through these things and try out some more endgame. But they could just be a failed concept entirely by themselves, and then the way that they've gated Ubers. If that ends up happening, I'll make another video talking about that sort of shit with my sort of overview of the system. But let me go ahead and show you how the Quin69 Chieftain Bleed Earthquake comes together, and in case you want to do something like that yourself. So here's a character, level 93 Chieftain about to pop off. He says stuff like, I'm about to pop off on my character, and then it devolves into various things, and that is what the character name is supposed to be around. Chieftain. And it is based around Bleed and Earthquake. Earthquake seems a bit slow for stacking Bleed at the moment, and definitely you could do much more kind of worthwhile Bleed, I'd say, with boneshatter, maybe even with something like lacerate. Don't know if it would work very well with the Chieftain, but yeah. There are other options for sure. So I was supposed to do Quin's build, or just Quin's concept. Basically, all I said was I was going to do Chieftain, Bleed, Earthquake as a concept, and then, do whatever I wanted around that. But, of course, he, for some reason, wanted to have some rules to doing a Quin build. So, I tried to somewhat follow them as much as I could, right? So he wanted me to not use an Abyssus. Obviously, I wasn't going to do that for a Bleed build. It's not really necessary there. Had to use an Adorned jewel, which, at the time of making the build, I had no fucking money, so that wasn't going to happen. And ideally, if you're going to build a Bleed build like this, Adorned kinda is the play. You pretty much have to do an Adorned to really go the distance, to ramp as much as possible. You can reference my previous Bleed bow from last league. Adorned will probably give you 2 to 3 times more damage than a conventional Bleed build can, because there's just not enough on the tree or clusters to get damage for Bleed scaling with, which Adorned lets you get so much more of. Weapon, bunch of flat fizz, Ralikesh and Affliction charges if you go super turbo. Otherwise, Rizlathas wants 10-second bleeds, ailment immunity, max res, so I did manage to hit most of that sort of stuff. With, a weapon that isn't anything too crazy, just a 1 divine fracture that you can buy, or I bought from the market, and then just use some essences for finding, an attack speed roll, and then this is about as good of a build or weapon that you'll ever need for something like this. You can, of course, graveyard craft something a good bit better than this, but to actually graveyard craft, if you're just doing it yourself, it takes a while to build up those corpses. Yes, you can spend some time on trade and eventually get the perfect weapon, but I've just been doing my own sort of corpse farming, and I still haven't really got enough to try and make a perfect item. So just did this thing. Other than that, there's nothing else too crazy going on. I tried to get ailment avoid on my chest from a veil here, and then just do my best to become kind of immune to ailments through boots and also the chest, and also one megalomaniac cluster. Grabbed a Raslathas, which, you know, I had to divine like once or twice, and then this is the best I could do, 40 more, 40 less. And in the end, using volatility as well meant that I've got some real big variation on my bleeds, but given that I'm Crimson Dance stacking, like, it kind of is okay, and evens out on the variance in the end. So I was using less duration for mapping in the end, because before I wasn't, but you kind of want that less delay on the bigger earthquake thing. Oh shit, money! But otherwise I was using melee fizz for single target, and you know, for most of the gameplay as well, because a lot of my gameplay did revolve around Vile Earthquake, and that was gonna be good enough. But yeah, it just feels like a bit of a slower, old school style build that doesn't really fly in PoE, modern PoE these days anyway. So it was a bit weird, but good enough for, you know, just farming regular maps and stuff. I did grab a Circle of Guilt, which has some buff effects for Herald of Purity, bunch of Chaos Res and a ring. I was using Hemophilias almost the entire time, just so that I could have bleed pops, because it was a bit more satisfying and also nice for farming some of that thicker content. And then I grabbed some gloves that would do some extra bleed stuff for single target. And then just a bunch of stats, some damage over time, and then a hat that had 10 fizz taken as fire, and then unique enemy fizz taken as fire, because that was kind of how I was trying to solve some of the damage taken incoming as Chieftain, fizz taken as fire, and then also fizz taken as fire and lightning here. And you can do that on like a Taste of Hate, something like that as well. So the tree, there's only so much you can do. It does end up looking similar to a Quin tree. It's just that he has to take a lot more life because he's playing SSF HC. I get a bit more liberty in taking a few more damage nodes or doing a cluster. That's pretty much the entire difference between what you would think is your own build and maybe a Quin build. Quin just over the top, gets a bit more defense so that he can play safer and doesn't really have to run the risk of dying quite as often as the rest of us do. So yeah, he'd have 1500 more life than my character, I think, and then a bit less DPS, right? And then of course I'm on trade, so I can at least get some clusters. I grabbed a cluster here to do wound aggravation, fuel the fight, so that's how I solved mana and mana leech. I then had to try and solve my ailment avoid, so I went with elegant form and just grabbed towering threat, and then a separate cluster over here with wound aggravation, vivid hues, and then I tried my best to solve some attack speed issues with all of my jewels. So a bit of attack speed there, damage with bleed, bit of attack speed there, bit of attack speed there, because the main problem I was running into is just having a bit too slow of a character for attacking and leaping around. So I tried my best to solve that through some attack speed and also making sure my weapon had some attack speed. Because without that, it is a pretty slow character. With that attack speed, it's palatable enough that I could play it and enjoy myself up to a certain point. I mean, I played for how long? 24 hours, got 93, killed a bunch of, you know, end game content, the current end game without Ubers or tier 17s, and it felt perfectly fine. So there it is. It goes through the campaign pretty nicely. It does do as much as you really need it to for more of a starter or slash second style character, but it's not going to be a world beater, I don't think. Maybe if you had Adorned, maybe if you built into defenses some other way a bit more, because I didn't really feel like I had quite enough damage for the bigger stuff, and I didn't really feel like I could take quite enough hits the way I was built, and I didn't really see an avenue to make it much tankier without losing a fuck ton of damage. So it kind of had its ceiling, I think. I honestly think I maybe could have taken on a couple of Ubers if I got to that, and the cost of it wasn't high enough, because the playstyle isn't too bad. There's some decent damage I can kind of ramp, but there's no way for me to get there without going through a bunch more mapping, going through tier 17s, which I'm not sure I can fucking do. And yeah, in any case, there it is. Punishment over. Quin69's Bleed Chieftain EQ done. Hope you guys enjoyed the process, watching on stream or anything. And then I've just now started rolling Penance Brand Berserker with the new cast speed, cast damage, rage hat. As far as I can tell, Penance Brand still looks busted, so look forward to the next video. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.